How big a deal is it, Mr. Hofbauer? The TPP deal being signed?
This is a very big deal. This is the largest trade agreement that's been concluded since the WTO was founded back in 1994. So it's a big thing. It's got about half the world economy involved, new frontiers of liberalization, particularly in services and investment, rules on state-owned enterprises. This is, I think, the trade template for the next decade.
All right, Professor Choi, though, there has been a lot of details that has now been worked out. For example, 85% contributing to the overall GDP of the 12 nations under this TPP has to have their government and their parliament approve this specific deal. Is that likely to happen within 2 years?
Yeah, I think in principle, within the initial time frame of 2 years, the 12 original members may freely become parties by ratifying, but even though this does not happen, so some member may not be able to ratify yet upon the completion of 2-year period, but still they may join the TPP after 2-year time frame and make the TPP effective if the 85% condition is met. So original 2-year time frame is, I think, rather symbolic, and the door can be open for quite a long time unless some economic reality changes. Of course, some country who fails in ratifying the treaty and the treaty was already entered into force, then that country must join the TPP upon the getting approval by the TPP Commission. But that's the after the ratification of the treaty and completion of the entry into force process.
Right.
So I think 2 years is quite symbolic period, and it can go some time, and still the door is open. So it's pretty much quite a time to accept original members to become a party.
Mr. Zhang, of course, China is not member of the TPP.
Right.
There were a lot of political discussions, if not debate, going on between Washington and Beijing about whether one has to invite the others to join, whether the other has been invited to join, and whether it is suitable to join, and it's appropriate for the others to invite, all of these. But they eventually, fundamentally, have a lot to do with who will decide on what kind of trade framework of the future. So, China, by not joining TPP at this moment, is it making a bigger role to the world trade mechanism, or its role has been minimized as a result?
I think that today, that global trade pattern gradually is changing, and the economic pattern also gradually changing. In that process, international trade and investment rules and regulation also gradually changing.
Right.
My sense is that with both China and the US and other economies in the world, actually we should work together, and we should have common discussion, and we should consult each other, and then to build new type of rules and regulations. But we realize that Obama said for TPP rules and regulations, just the US can write it instead of China. I think this is a not good position.
He didn't say that directly, did he?
Yeah.
Is that China's understanding, or did he really say that? I'm not sure that whether he really said that.
Actually, he just TPP signed agreement, and he repeated his words. That is, only the U.S. can lead the new rules and regulations, and China has no right to join this type of rules and regulations writing. I think that in the future, actually, all economies, actually, we should discuss each other Also, even if TPP is on behalf of, new direction of international trade and investment, but also this type of regulation should be opened or should be more inclusive. Also, you know that for Japan and the US, they want to make China to join in the future. But if you cannot show any respect to Chinese side, so how to make China to join?
Okay,
I think
Mr.
that's the problem.
Hofbauer, therefore I have to go to you. You probably heard your Chinese counterpart's response. First of all, is that U.S. intention to write the rules of the future international trade and investment mechanism by itself?
Well, let me remind you, and I know you know it, that we're in the middle of an election campaign here in the United States. And you get all sorts of ridiculous things said in election campaigns. And one of the ridiculous things that's said by Donald Trump and Senator Cruz and some others is anti-China kind of rhetoric. So we're getting this out of the election campaign. But let's now talk about the reality, and I very much agree with what Mr. Zhang said about the long term. And we've written a book to this effect here at the Peterson Institute. We think that in the next phase, after TPP is enacted and comes into force and has 5 years of experience, that TPP and China should join together and jointly write the next generation of rules.
Well,
it's not a matter of excluding China. China's too big, too powerful, too important to the world economy to be excluded.
well, you could say
So
that.
you just have to see this as a progression.
Well, you could say that,
Yes,
Mr.
what?
Hofbauer, but on the other hand, if rules, basic rules are already set, any newcomers have to, first of all, obey some of the
Well,
commonly agreed
you're-
basic
yes.
rules, and only by that can they have entry to this specific mechanism. Wouldn't that mean preconditions already?
Well, it seems to me that when China is ready to join with the other countries in the TPP, and there may be more than 12 when that time comes, that there will be some adjustment of the rules to reflect China's very specific interests. And let me just say that, for example, in investment, there are a lot of differences between the countries on the tariffs. It's no single agreement on how fast tariffs will be eliminated. In terms of services, which ones will be open and how fast varies a lot between countries. So there are a lot of rules to be written in the future. It's not a done deal
Okay.
for all time right now.
Mr. Zhang, what do you make of it? Has China to accept some of the so-called fundamental rules of TPP if China really wants to join the game in the near future? Will China willing to do that, or China would rather subscribe to a totally different trade and investment mechanism, FTA, AP, RCEP, and many others that China has already been promoting regionally at least?
Yeah. Firstly, I'd like to say that I'm very happy to hear the voices from, American scholars. And just before what he said, that I agree with him. On the other hand,
but there are
yeah,
so many different views in the United States
Right.
of America. Mr. Hofbauer right now they really
on behalf
represent
of,
the administration.
on behalf of economic circle, and I like to say
Not even that.
Yeah.
There are Republicans and Democrats and different kinds of views going on as well.
Of
But
course.
having said that,
Yeah.
Mr. Zhang, go ahead.
right, his personal views.
Yes, indeed.
And my sense is that actually, if China on TPP issues, China will make our reassessment on TPP rules and regulations. This is the first thing. We have to make clear what type of impact will be on China's economy and China's development in the future. Secondly, I think that we will consider those new regulations made by TPP, and if China can accept this type of new standard and new regulations, not only for those issues behind on the borders, trade liberalization, standard as well as trade and investment facilitation. I mean, especially for those issues behind the border, what type of impact on China's reform and development, we need to know, the details. Lastly, I think that in the future, in the long run, for China, 100% to accept fundamental rules, I don't think that would be possible.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Professor Choi, you've been attentively listened to the other two panelists.
Yes.
And now it's really your time to speak. First of all, Professor Choi, there are a lot of details about exactly what TPP is about. It's not known at all. Even though they signed the agreement, the details of agreement, many details are still not known to the rest of the world. The rest of the world are calling for details about what exactly TPP is. Secondly, there are enormous amounts of bilateral, multilateral trade and investment negotiations that are going on right now. Even though it is being signed, a lot of details still need to be inked after this among countries. So, given all of these unpredictabilities, what does it really mean, even for countries within TPP and for those that are willing to join in the future?
I think TPP has already created a very comprehensive and forward-looking mega trade agreement that already set a very high standard benchmark on trade rules, probably for the first time in the history of Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific was the region where economic integration in such a large scale has been much delayed compared to other regions. So not only very short-term market access benefit or stability in investment protection, but also very long-term stability and mutual cooperative spirit. I think that kind of benefit is really the one that TPP gives to Asia Pacific. I think China, as a very much responsible player in the region, I think should be seriously considered to join the TPP because American and Chinese rivalry in the region will very much damaging the cooperative spirit. So I think if the entry fee is not that much high, and if it is really digestible, I think China should be, as soon as possible, considering coming into the club and making a much more cooperative framework together with all the Asian partners.
All right. What does it mean for China?
Yeah.
Will China be interested? Thirdly, how will these really benefiting the developing and emerging economies? Whose worker that's really going to benefit eventually?
My observation is that before 2013, actually China is priced. We will study on feasibility of joining TPP, but this time that after agreement declared, and we said that we will keep our open attitude on that. So I think that for China now, we are not so eager, to join TPP because we realize that there is a huge huge gap between China and the TPP regulations. Secondly, we are not so clear the potential impact. Third one, we will observe the developing economies' behavior.